Welcome to episode 112 of the Shared Security Monthly Show. And joining me is co-host and game master, Scott Wright.
Hey Tom, thanks for that great intro.
Little pun on words there.
The game master.
Game master, because
yeah.
This episode we're going to be talking about gamification, something that Scott knows just a little bit about. Right,
Yeah,
Scott?
it's been an interesting ride. I mean, people who know me, who've been around security awareness for 10 or more years, that wasn't always what I talked about. I didn't talk about gamification until 3-4 years ago, and now it's sort of become my life. So yeah, it's a interesting world.
Yeah, it is. And, the reason I wanted to bring it up on the show as a topic is because, I hear more and more people talk about how they want to move from kind of the traditional CBT-based, video-based, security awareness training to something that's interactive, something that's engaging and fun for people to go through. I'm frankly still surprised how many organizations are still using that really ancient old model for security awareness training. It's like,
yeah. And I call that static content, right? I mean, whether it's videos or, quizzes or whatever, it's still the same every time. Right. And so people kind of get to understand it's all I have to do is click through this stuff. And if I pass at the end, that's great.
Yeah. I remember back in the day seeing when I worked for a large organization, cheat sheets floating around through email of how to, get through the annual security awareness training just by, here, A, B, C, whatever, even with screenshots, was kind of commonplace because, that tells you right there that the training sucks if they're cheating to get through it.
Yeah. And I have a whole theory about how this has come to where it is now. And when you look at it from the past, most of the time, because security awareness has been done using learning management systems, and they're fairly limited in their ability to do interaction and, unexpected things, you get this sort of perception when someone's asked to do an awareness training course that they know already in their mind what it's going to be like, and it's going to be boring, as you said, right? But they discover that, you click through, you do the minimum amount, you pass, and then you go back to work. And it's kind of like cramming for an exam. It really doesn't stick, right? And so what managers have learned is, well, this stuff we have to do for compliance reasons, it's not giving us any ROI. So I wanted to have people spend as little time on it as possible, right? So I've had companies like a 5,000 person organization say they want to cover all security awareness topics in an online course in 20 minutes.
Wow.
that everybody has to complete, right? And I say, well, it's not going to teach them anything. You might get to check mark, right? So it's kind of what I call a death spiral, right? I mean, the low expectations of traditional security awareness training have led to low ROI, and it just keeps self-fulfilling prophecy. And so nobody's learning from it. They're spending money on it just for compliance reasons.
Yeah, so maybe that's a good place to start. Let's talk about what is gamification. And I think you had mentioned earlier to me, this concept of or gamified business processes. What does that all entail?
Yeah. So, gamification, of course, if you look at online, there's many different definitions for what gamification really is. Some of them are very pedantic and theoretical and saying it's the use of game mechanics and techniques in a non-game environment, right? It's like, okay, that doesn't help me, right? So I've kind of come up with a couple of more specific definitions around gamification. One of them is what I call gamified business processes. And you can see that in a lot of different areas, even online. When you create your LinkedIn profile, you'll see a progress bar. It's a bit of a game mechanic or gamification there to kind of entice you to finish it, right? And that's a business environment and a business process that they're trying to get you to complete. And so they're using those little techniques to tweak you in the real world to do things. The other part of it I use is called gamified learning. And it really is an area where you can immerse people into a new environment that is interactive and immersive and dynamic, right? And not only can you do learning, but you can do simulation. And so I have this term called gamified simulation. And it's like it's driving proficiency. Think of aircraft, pilots, airline pilots have to go through a proficiency simulation every 6 months, right, to keep their license. And people really don't have a way right now of learning and practicing to become proficient at certainly at cybersecurity, but there are a lot of other ways that you could gamify learning and simulation for things like harassment or values and ethics or even health and safety, right? So all of those different areas where you want people to become more proficient, but the static content that is being used right now to try and teach people isn't effective. And so we're using gamification in that context to say we want to improve people's proficiency. And we start with using gamified learning and simulation to show them things that they might not have seen before and may not see very often in the real world, but it gives them a chance to practice how they would respond to those things. And then you could put in gamified business processes to say, okay, let's put a goal that says if the whole team gets to this state, or we get this many points or whatever, then we meet that achievement and everybody gets a Starbucks gift card or something, right? That's the kind of example of how you gamify a business process. But putting the gamified business process first is kind of risky because you don't really know if people even know how to achieve that end goal. And it has to be really carefully designed. Whereas in a learning environment that is gamified, you've got total control. There's all control of all variables essentially. And you can not only teach people, but you can measure. So that's one of the things we can talk about later in terms of what are the advantages.
Yeah. So I guess, how do you respond to people that say, playing games, it just sounds like too fun, right? That's not like a serious business issue here. Like, how do you respond to people about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable, certainly, especially from the management that's kind of been from the old school, essentially, right? I think the younger generation gets it, that gamification is a good way to improve culture and improve a lot of aspects of the business processes. But there is really an interesting aspect of gamification that people have kind of overlooked, and that is businesses have certain goals, right? You want to get to a certain, level of revenue or profitability, et cetera. And it's really hard to translate that into things that are meaningful to people. You could look at OKRs, or objectives and key results, or those kind of goal setting frameworks, but they're tough to do in some cases. And it takes a lot of time and practice to get it refined. Whereas if you use gamification in an immersive environment, you actually have like control over this little universe that you can create an experience that gives people a motivation to, for example, if you're looking at sorting phishing messages or something like that, right? You can say, well, I'm going to give you points every time you get you open up the sender information and look at it and make the right choice about whether this sender email address is safe or not, right? And so you give people a little bit of fun every time they make a good choice within that learning environment, and you begin to be able to align people's motivations, their desire to get little rewards, with the business's goal of having people be better able to spot those and make those decisions that are important in getting to the final goals. So it's really, for me, it's a tool to align business goals with personal motivations in a really kind of artificial or synthetic way that you can't really do in the real world.
Yeah. So in your opinion, I guess, thinking of from the cybersecurity and privacy context, how does gamification, affect that type of industry?
Yeah, I mean, especially cybersecurity, one of the reasons that it's become really important is because the threats change all the time, and we have to sort of try to get people to re-engage on a regular basis to learn some of this stuff. And the common excuses that you get from people when they hear it's an awareness course or something like that is, well, it's too boring. We call it death by PowerPoint sometimes, right? It's just like, okay, I've seen this before, or it's not relevant to me, or I wasn't hired to know this stuff, or I don't have time. Like, there's so many of them that I've heard. If you start hearing those kinds of excuses for why people don't do the training, that's because, or it's a good indicator that gamification could actually help raise the effectiveness of that training. And the difference I see, if you talk about awareness versus task-based training, people are learning a lot of different things. We were just talking a while ago about, secure coding practices, and, should we gamify that? That'd be great to gamify. I think it's, it'd be fun for people to go in and learn, but people are already motivated to go in and learn that stuff anyway. It's just making it more enjoyable. So gamification is certainly able to make that whole process more enjoyable, but you got to be able to motivate them in the first place. And if they're trying to learn, or you want them to learn something that they are not inclined to, or they've had a bad experience with, there are a lot of aspects of gamification that really fit perfectly with awareness training. And that is, the idea to motivate them and get their engagement first. Everybody understands games are engaging, right? They're visual and dynamic, and that's fun for a while, but how long would you actually keep people engaged enough to learn and even practice, go back and repeat things, right? So the gamification mechanics that we use are, trying to give people immediate feedback, so that every time they click on something, they see something new, right? Or they experience something that they didn't expect. And between that and giving them a safe place to actually practice, and then being able to capture all that information about people's ability to make decisions, makes it really much more possible for you to measure how people are doing overall.
So you've been doing ClickArmor. You've been the CEO, and it's your startup, right, for a while now. Yeah. What kind of results do you see, just in terms of your customers with the gamified approach?
Yeah, and it's something that I've always felt we should be able to do. And so the very first thing that we wanted to do is create some way of showing an improvement from the beginning to the end. So it'd be ideal if you could create a baseline test and have people come in and say, okay, I'm going to try this game for phishing awareness to see how well I can spot safe or suspicious emails. And so we do that, and then we teach people the different lessons about analyzing sender information, links, etc. And in the end, we do a final test. And in our most recent metrics, we had over 3,000 people go through our phishing course, and on average, their baseline proficiency coming in was 56%. That's how well they were able to spot reasonably obscure phishing messages, that could be trying to trick them. At the end, the final average was 84%.
Wow.
So it's a 50% increase in their ability to spot, just simple things like URL substitutions, or, urgent messages, or things that could be tricky, right? And we get a lot of comments from people about, I remember now, like, there's always at least one thing that they came out of it with. Now I know to look for that, right? And that's going to help for sure. But those numbers that we just got are just amazing. Like, they're way beyond my wildest dreams, and being able to show some real results.
Yeah, to get that kind of results through, training. That just tells you right there that games are, with just the nature of them being more engaging, it makes them remember, right?
Yeah.
Those lessons.
There's actually been some academic research that we have used in our marketing materials to say, there's evidence that gamification improves people's engagement by as much as 80%, right? But that doesn't guarantee they're actually going to learn and retain this stuff. But if we can actually show that, from baseline to final, they really do remember. And it's not like they can, as you said, you can't pass around a cheat sheet for what we have, because it's varied. Like, every time you do it, the answers are randomized, and you might see a different order of scenarios and things like that. So it's almost impossible for people to memorize the sequence of things that they should know, because if we do a final test, you might see a scenario that starts out the same, but it actually has two variations, right? So there's a safe version and there's a suspicious version, and it's kind of fun to watch people go through that and go, "Oh, I thought I got it right," but and it's funny because they'll say it was really hard, and I'd say, "Is it too hard?" They said, "No, it's good." And I was just going too fast or trying too hard, and so people start to realize part of the key in cybersecurity is getting them to slow down and just think about things when they see certain cues.
And now a quick word from our sponsors. Given the state of the world that we are currently living in, your digital privacy, cybersecurity, and health is more important than ever. That's why I recommend the use of a Faraday sleeve for your laptop, smartphone, and key fob. And if you want the best Faraday products on the market, you need Silent Pocket. And because you listen to this podcast, you can take 10% off your order right now during checkout at silentpocket.com by using discount code Shared Security.
Is your team starting to show signs of fatigue from traditional security awareness compliance training, or from phishing assessments that target them for those teachable moments? As we've seen in recent news, these kinds of training are having a negative impact on corporate culture, and they're really not all that effective. So there has to be a better way. ClickArmor is the first gamified learning platform that helps build a self-defending team through engaging learning challenges and exercises. Its unique lesson templates, built with proven gamification techniques, let people learn and exercise important defensive concepts in a safe and fun environment. Whether you need to quickly deploy a training solution that gets people to stop clicking on things immediately, or you've got your own boring content that needs to be put into a more interesting user experience, ClickArmor can help. So go to clickarmor.ca/shared security to learn how to build a self-defending team.
So the other thing that came to mind too is just about cost, right? I mean, you think that, creating something this interactive is based on games or a game concept is expensive, right? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I did a lot of exploration when I was first thinking about building ClickArmor. I wasn't even planning to build it from scratch. I was looking for platforms out there that I could just build some fun game applications on and sort of use those. But it turns out that those are expensive to build. If you're going to, it is expensive to build if you're going to build something from scratch and it has a certain purpose, right? So a lot of people have built, password games or things like that. And I call that a point solution, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great for exercising one aspect of security, but it's not really scalable from the point of view of being able to create new content or even adjust it. One of the things I learned having taught awareness for 10 years is every business has different terminology, different workflows, different policies, different risks. And so you have to be able to change the content easily. And building a game that is flexible is pretty expensive. So essentially that's what we've done is we've built this flexible architecture so that we can create arbitrary types of learning challenges and simulations that are all kind of modular, and we can plug them in, create a whole new course based on a different arrangement of learning quizzes and things like that. So that's what our goal really was, to make gamification much more affordable. And so if you compare what we have to other kinds of phishing assessment solutions, for example, it's essentially the same cost, but you get much more out of it from the flexibility for future expansion.
Nice. So kind of thinking of the future, have you thought about like other types of training, other things that, you're thinking about at ClickArmor?
Yeah, for sure. I think, once I realized that, awareness is the common theme here of things that people don't like to learn about. And if we built a platform that is flexible enough to work for cybersecurity and to be able to adjust with threats and every business is different, then yeah, we could build all kinds of different awareness training. And when you think about how that works in the enterprise or even in managed service providers, they're getting a lot of demand now for things like diversity training, right? Or compliance with CMMC, the Cyber Maturity Model certification. And so those are all things that we are expanding not only for managed service providers, the key cyber areas and compliance areas that they need to know, but we will actually, in fact, we right now I just created a diversity self-assessment. So it's like a little 5-question game that you go in and it asks you a few questions about what you know about the key issues in diversity right now. And there's some statistics, there's some sort of interesting new data. And it's just a way to sort of explore that. And in our just little learning quiz, it lets you see how this kind of stuff can be used within a whole other area than cybersecurity.
Nice. So for our listeners that maybe don't know how to find more about you and of course ClickArmor, where can they go to find out more information or get a demo, or how can they find out more?
So our website is clickarmor.ca, spelt the American way. CLICKARMOR.ca.
Oh.
I couldn't get the .com domain yet. If anybody knows how to get clickarmor.com, let me know. But it's we'll get there. But yeah, so the clickarmor.ca, we've got a free phishing assessment that's kind of fun to do. It's called Can I Be Phished? And lots of gamification resources there as well, and papers. I have my blog there. I also link to, we have our own YouTube channel and podcast that Tom helps me out with, the ClickArmor channel. And in that, I have a Can I Be Phished channel within our own channel there, that, or playlist that has episodes where I typically will interview people just of general interest in business or security and MSP areas about phishing. And we do a walkthrough, what I call unboxing a phishing message. And so, I use the methodology that we sort of teach within the gamified environment, which is looking at the sender information, the links, the body, etc. And it's fun. We do that for 5 minutes just to look at any live phishing messages that I've received and just discuss those things, and then we explore the guest's point of view on different aspects of cyber and business. So that's a fun place too. But yeah, so on Twitter we're at ClickArmor. LinkedIn, I'm on there as Scott Wright, and you can find me.
Yep, and you probably have heard the ad that we have every week on the show. Scott's company is a great supporter of the podcast and co-host, so he does double duty for us there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. In fact, the podcast ads actually, or the listeners anyway, of this podcast, we've gotten some really good leads from those. Guys from Australia. Shout out to them, and so it's really sort of a fun environment to be in with all this stuff.
Well, Scott, you're doing great things at ClickArmor. I'll tell you that. You're
I'd love to hear from
bleeding
people.
Edge. Yes.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from people and hear their stories, especially. Those are great things for us to put in blogs and podcasts. And I think gamification. I've talked to people who create a game studio, basically, who did custom game development, kind of like I talked about being expensive. Yeah, big enterprises can do it, but not everybody can. But they said there's a huge demand now for gamification in training in a lot of different areas. So I think that we'll be able to ride a wave on this, hopefully, for a while.
Absolutely. All right, Scott. Well, thank you once again for your insights on gamification. It's a really important topic, I think, in our industry, and just great seeing the awesome things that ClickArmor is doing.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for allowing me the time to expand on all this stuff that I love to talk about.
Absolutely. All right, all. Thanks, and we will talk to you next week.